every 7-8 figure brand we work with has email automations in place, has email welcome flows in place, has email pop-ups, and then is also sending campaign emails, whether those are announcements and sales, or ideally they're mixed in with product. Now, the counterintuitive thing that I wish more people would do: send plain text emails. They're so easy, they're so simple, and they're way more effective. When I see the really glossy one that you had your designer spend a ton of time on, that's like all JPEGs, I don't even hit display images on it, right? I never even saw the damn thing.
Welcome to the Ecom Breakthrough Podcast. Are you ready to unlock the full potential and growth in your business? You've already crossed 7 figures in sales, but the challenge is knowing how to take your business to the next level. Join Josh Hadley, an 8-figure ecom business owner and investor, as he interviews highly successful business owners. Get ready, because you're going to learn specific actions you can take today to help your business reach its full potential and leave a lasting impact on the world.
Welcome to the Ecom Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hadley, where I interview the top business leaders in e-commerce. Past guests include Kevin King, Michael E. Gerber, author of The E-Myth, and Stephen Pope from My Amazon Guy. Today, I am speaking with Kurt Elster. He is the host of the unofficial Shopify podcast. He has got a wealth of wisdom in the world of Shopify. He's going to be pulling back the veil and helping us understand, how do Amazon brands transition into generating more of their sales on Shopify than they are on Amazon? This episode is brought to you by Ecom Breakthrough, where I specialize in investing in and scaling 7-figure e-commerce companies to 8 figures and beyond. If you're an ambitious e-commerce entrepreneur looking for a partner who can help take your business to the next level, my team and I bring hands-on experience, strategic insights, and the resources needed to fuel your growth. So if you or someone you know is ready to scale, or looking for an investment partner or consulting, reach out to me directly at josh@ecombreakthrough.com. That's ecom with 2 M's, and then let's turn your dreams into reality. But today I am super excited to introduce you all to Kurt Elster. He is currently helping Shopify Plus merchants like Hoonigan make more money at his Shopify partner agency, EtherCycle. He is hosting a podcast with over 2 million downloads, the unofficial Shopify podcast. He is also developing public Shopify apps, and he is investing, advising, and both with Govalo, Postpilot, and other select clients and PE firms. So with that introduction, welcome to the show, Kurt.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. Do you do sound effects on this show?
Oh, I love it. You've got sound effects. Like, obviously, you are a very experienced podcast host, so I'm genuinely excited. I think, like, from what the conversation was that we had before we hit the record button, I think our audience is just going to love this episode. So we'll banter back and forth and have some good times here. But Kurt, why don't you give people a little bit of background? How did you get into the e-commerce space, and what have you been doing for the past decade?
All right, this is wild. I think I was 15. I'm in my 40s. I'm an elder millennial, but I was a teenager in high school, and the Furby craze happened. And prior to then was the Beanie Baby craze. And I was in the Chicago suburbs, which was ground zero for the Beanie Baby craze. Did not realize it, being there, and saw, how much money people made on eBay. In essentially what's retail arbitrage is what we call it now. And so I was like, I'm going to do that again, but for Furbies, which were hard to get. And so I would take a bus to a mall after school and just try and buy Furby stock. And pretty soon all the KB Toys and these couple local toy retailers at the mall knew me, and I'd buy Furbies and I'd flip them on eBay. And it was not Beanie Babies. I did not get rich doing this, but I did make money, and it didn't feel hard. It felt exciting. And so that is an early experience of hey, anyone with the right opportunities and a little bit of risk taking can make some money for themselves. And so that would have been a side hustle, but when you're a teenager and oh man, I could buy Dreamcast games with this. That's very exciting. And from there, that, all right, now I'm interested in e-commerce because to me it feels real, accessible, and easy. And so I always sought out e-commerce opportunities where I could get them. And by the time I went to college, I went to graduate school, got my MBA, and as soon as I was doing some 1099 contracting in my 20s, became eBay channel manager at a large auto parts dropshipping store. But it didn't, I was working full time, didn't feel right because I'm like, I want to be my own boss. And I didn't feel like I was. And there's this distinct moment where I was like tying my shoes to go to work, and I was like, I don't know, 27 at the time. And I started crying, just tying my Chuck Taylors. I remember this. And I put in my 2-week notice. I had no plan. And then like the next day I'm in the shower and I'm like, I'm going to start my own e-commerce platform. Well, of course, I didn't know what I know. It was like, it just a wildly insane decision. But sometimes not knowing, there's a big benefit in that. Because now I've started and I've got the momentum and it didn't work. But locally, people misunderstood what I was doing. And we had rented an office, and like local small businesses knocked on my door. They said, well, we think you do websites. Like that's how small the world was. You just like Google it, it would pop. And I'm like, oh, there's this web developer. It was just miscategorized at Google or something. They knock on my door and I'd be like, we don't build websites. Get out of here with your money. Ridiculous. Meanwhile, I cannot get this e-commerce platform off the ground. And then I suddenly I got to pay the rent. And so I'm like, well, maybe I'll sell one of those websites. And it was like $800. It was like a static HTML brochure site. And then another one shows up and I'm like, well, let's put this on WordPress. And now pretty soon I'm charging $5,000. And then like $10,000. I'm like, is this even legal? And I had all these leads and like getting business through it with local businesses because I'd stuck letters under all their doors introducing myself, and I hand addressed them. And I thought, well, what if I just did this again, but with a bigger client? And I did the same thing again, but with large advertising and marketing agencies in downtown Chicago, which was accessible to me. And the same thing worked. Only now I'm doing huge projects. Only they're a lot harder and they're bigger budget. But we did work for Verizon via an agency, the NFL via an agency. Had no business doing it, but cut our teeth and did it right. And then the last project before I said we're just doing e-commerce and Shopify exclusively, we did a site for Hilton Hotels. And it was just like so painful to be in that world because it's subjective and it's squishy. E-commerce is not. E-commerce has KPIs. Your success is what's my revenue, conversion rate, average order value. You could point to those things and there's science behind it. And I was really attracted to that. And so I said, all right, let's take that web design development skill set. Let's take that business experience. Let's take that love of and that history of buying and selling online. And let's go all in on Shopify. And I tried all these e-commerce platforms. Shopify had the best documentation. It had this phenomenal partner program. We built a custom theme. Again, not knowing what I didn't know. I was like, I'll just build a custom website for a friend who had a local bike shop. And that was our first Shopify project. And they took notice. They said, you should join the partners program. And then we got a lead through it. And it's abandoned dunes golf course. If you golf, it's a big deal. And so it's just, and I'm awkward as hell, right? I have social anxiety disorder. And so my brilliant idea was I'll host a podcast. I had no business doing this. I had listened to one podcast in my life. It was Serial. And you know what? You try anything enough times, you get pretty good at it. And so it worked out. I had a lead gen source. I had experience. And I had a niche focus, and that was Shopify. And a love of entrepreneurship. And that, that's how I got here.
Oh man, I love that journey, Kurt. And I love that, through your journey, you had to pivot and make adjustments along the way, right? And sometimes you do have to step out into that darkness, so to speak, right? And you're like, I don't know, I hope something, I hope as I take this step of darkness that like the path lights up ahead of me, or that I step on solid ground. But I think that that's honestly where your business grows. And if you just stay in the light where it's only things that and you're not pushing your comfort zone, that's where you just plateau. And actually, if you're not growing, you're actually declining, right? And so I would that's every encouragement to every entrepreneur. And that's what I love about every entrepreneur's story is that they are full of pivots. And my story is the exact same, full of constant pivots and finding, where that path leads you to. So I love that. Now, Kurt, let's sink our teeth into the world of Shopify, because you've been living and breathing the world of Shopify. The listeners of this, the majority of them are Amazon sellers. They got their brands launched on Amazon. They experienced success, 7 figures in revenue on Amazon. That's great. But guess what? The world of Amazon is only getting harder. Increased competition, Amazon's raising their fees, everything, like just margin compression everywhere you look. So everybody likes the idea of, man, it would be great if 50% of my sales could be generated on Shopify. Is it as simple as reaching out to Kurt and saying, Kurt, build me the amazing website so that I get 50% of my sales on Shopify? What do I need to do, Kurt?
If you build it, they will not come. That is the problem here. The Amazon is a phenomenal way to validate an idea, to build a business, to get those initial sales. Because I think ideas are free, right? Product development, all right, expensive, time consuming, that depending on what you're selling, that's harder. That's the part that scares me. Jeez, I don't want to have to develop a product. But then once you've got it out there and you've got, the messaging and the brand and the positioning, and maybe ideally you've tried to sell it locally so that you could talk to people face to face, you've got this understanding. And then you build these Amazon listings based on that information. And Amazon does the really hard part for you. Like the listing fees, all the fees you pay to Amazon that you hate, that you're paying them for the traffic, the top of funnel. That's like the insanely hard part that you are absolutely missing out on and potentially not appreciating the difficulty of. Once you build that Shopify store, if you are successful on Amazon and you never market that Shopify store at all, so long as the brand names match, you've reused the content, you will get some sales for people who found you on Amazon, bought from you, then Googled it, or saw you on Amazon and thought, maybe I'll buy direct for whatever reason. We do see that, like for sure, sales come through, natural and organic, but hardly enough to justify it. If you want to see that same success, you have to be you have to master the sales funnel, and the heart. You've got like the middle of the sales funnel is going to be your website, right? But that top of sales funnel, where you acquire that traffic, where you go out, interrupt people in what they're doing, or get yourself in front of them at whatever watering hole they hang out at on the internet, and then get them to your website. And then maybe if you did a really great job, 1 in 50 people will buy. And that's what's so tough about it. Because everyone on Amazon has an extremely high buyer intent. I didn't go to Amazon, because I was looking for trivia, right? I went to Amazon with the intent to search for a product. It's high intent customers. And man, that's cool. But it's Amazon's customer, not yours, right? And so I think we've built a number of Shopify stores for people who were very successful on Amazon. And that's the thing they always underestimate. It's like it is building that sales funnel, acquiring it. Because either you're going to hire someone to figure out pay-per-click ads for you, or you're going to spend some money figuring it out on your own. And honestly, I think both approaches are correct. Like you probably want to burn some money figuring it out on your own so that you could be comfortable speaking the language when you're talking to an agency or a freelancer or someone else that you hire to manage those Facebook ads for you. Now, what's nice is you own the customer, you own the experience, you are responsible for everything, except maybe fulfillment. You can use Fulfilled by Amazon and have them do the fulfillment off your Shopify store. I think that part's cool. I've set that up. Not as tough as you'd think.
Yeah, I like that, Kurt. So I love that you've got these experiences where what you're saying is just because you open up your Shopify storefront doesn't mean everybody's going to come rushing now, right? And to your point, I think that people do undervalue the immense amount of high intent search traffic that Amazon brings to the table. And they know it. And they know that like you ain't got nowhere else to go, right? And so for them,
go try shopping on Walmart. Let me know how it goes. That Walmart marketplace, brutal.
But what else do you expect? If you are the business, if you are the CEO of Amazon, would you not do the exact same thing? You're like, we're giving free handouts to everybody. Like we could increase this until there's some significant like pressure and pullback and we genuinely start losing market share. Maybe then I'm concerned, right? So I think my rule of thumb is this. Guess what? Amazon fees are only going to continue to increase, right? Until there's truly a genuine competitor where Amazon feels like they're losing market share, Amazon's going to continue pushing that envelope. So appreciate what Amazon brings to the table, but also at the same token, I think it is wise once you get to a certain stage And maybe we could have that conversation. At what point is it worth it for a brand to maybe diversify onto Shopify? Because Kurt, it sounds like from what you're telling me, it's kind of two very different kind of like skill sets you need to have. I know how the game of Amazon operates really well. I know how to get the keywords built into my listings, how to have the AI read the listings. I know how to target the right customers. I know my PPC advertising strategies. That's Amazon. But sounds like Shopify is totally in a lot of ways a very different ball game. So Kurt, at what point would you recommend somebody that had success on Amazon moving over to Shopify versus maybe doubling down on Amazon? Any thoughts there?
All right. So this is a good question, and I'm not necessarily sure the right answer, but I've got a theory. And so when people have come to us that have successful Shopify stores, it's kind of interesting. They're never necessarily mad about the fees. It's that they'll have heard a story from like a forum, from a friend, that in which the person's like, hey, here's the problem we had with Amazon and basically our very successful business. And it'll be like a misunderstanding. There's always a reason, right? It's never anybody's fault. They lost the sales temporarily, permanently. They hit a very
suspended.
Painful hiccup.
Yep, they got suspended or for whatever reason. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sure it wasn't their fault. It never is. And that spooks them. Like, it's not happened to them. It's happened to someone they know, and they saw it, and they're like, uh-oh, if it can happen to them, it can happen to me. And so oftentimes that like the Shopify store that gets spun up is just a result of trying to diversify risk. And it's, the danger of having a business with a single income stream. If you sell on Amazon and you have like a single hero product, guess what? It's a really risky business. Because, all right, that listing doesn't sell anymore. You run out of inventory, something happens, or it gets suspended. Geez, you got a problem. Versus, all right, now if I have it on Shopify, okay, I'm in more control. So I still have to abide by Shopify's acceptable use policy. I still have to not upset the payment processors, right? But it's going to be, I think, there's less scrutiny and less shenanigans than you see with Amazon. And you own the customer, right? You can follow up with them is really the value. After the first purchase, I can email them. Okay, great. But so when should I do that? I mean, I think immediately, if you have the brand name, try and secure the domain name. It doesn't cost very much. There's no reason not to do that. And all right, if I get that brand name, maybe just having I get that domain name, if I have that, maybe it's not a bad idea to spin up just a basic Shopify store, or even something that has a little bit of content that for SEO value. If I can age that domain name, that has some value to it, some trust, versus like I spin up the store all in one go and try to make sales 48 hours later. A little tougher. You could use it as like a support portal, or what we've seen a lot of people do, registration, right? You send out the product and then you have to, potentially it has a warranty. Okay, well, how do I know the details of what's going on here? Like prove that the customer bought this, right? So make a product registration form on your site, have that as a pack-in with a QR code on the Amazon product that they receive. You're like, hey, register to activate your warranty. Now, if there is a problem with the product, okay, you could get in touch with them directly. But ideally, you have a checkbox, and you can't force them into this. It has to be voluntary, right? We don't want to. The FTC has new guidelines for these things. But optionally, you let them get into your email list when they register the product. And so then, right now, I can siphon some of those Amazon customers, and maybe on their repeat purchase, now that they're on my email list, I can start selling to them. And that could be a way to kind of like hybrid approach, let it naturally figure out when it's going to happen. But like, all right, let's say we buy some wild domain name or some wild extension, $50 a year. Most domain names aren't going to be $50 a year. And then hosting that Shopify store, $80 a month if I'm on one of the fancier plans. There are cheaper plans than that. And then we just have to have a form on that site, and then maybe that post to like Google Sheets. And so now I've got my registration. Well, maybe we just watch that. And if traffic starts to go up, or we start to see, like, all right, it's when I hit 1,000 registrations, then we're going to we're going to spend the time and build out a proper Shopify store. Like that might be a good way to do it. Set yourself up for success with just a little bit of effort and work iteratively, right? Trying to do everything all at once is rough.
Yeah, I like that. And I really like the idea, Kurt, as well, is securing your domain name. So as early as you possibly can. So basically my recommendation would be as soon as you file that trademark registration, go and claim that domain name. Plus, you should probably be looking like, can I purchase the .com domain name of whatever term I'm trying to trademark to begin with? I think that's wise and prudent. I remember, so our brand, as an example here, we picked our brand name and we were doing custom wedding invitations to start off with, right? And then it wasn't until like 6 months later that we're like, we should have a website because we were just doing like friends and family, right?
Okay.
And then it was like, oh crap, that .com is taken, right?
So many of them are. You got to get creative.
But then what we ended up doing is, well, we sat on it for a while and we're just like, all right, so we'll build in an extra word as Hadley Custom Designs. So we're like, okay, extra word in there. But we started having some success with like doing some Facebook ad traffic. And so all of a sudden, and same thing on Instagram, there began to be a lot of search volume for just Hadley Designs itself. And what ended up happening is whoever owned that domain name, I can't believe they ever got rid of it. But one day I just checked and it was available. But it was available for like $5,000. I was like, oh crap. So we ended up having to pay it because all these guys, they just sit on, it's just like they're speculating on land, essentially, right? They're speculating on these domain names saying,
oh, I hate it.
Here's the Google search traffic. And because of this search traffic, I bet there's a brand owner sitting behind it that's going to want to acquire this domain name. So I'm going to jack up the price. So anyways, there's my just short story to say, like, when you have that good idea for that brand name, get your domain name, then file your trademark. So I like that. And then Kurt, I also love your recommendation. Just like open up a basic Shopify storefront, just so it starts getting some history behind it, right? That Google's like, okay, this didn't just show up yesterday. Do I trust it? Do I not trust it? And I also think it adds credibility to your even your Amazon sales, right?
I was going to say,
people might
that
go
credibility.
check. Okay,
but what happens when they Google your brand name? If there's nothing there, that doesn't look as good as, hey, they at least have a presence. And oh, look, like I could register my warranty and I could submit a warranty claim here. And there's like an FAQ. There's at least, like, really, I think initially it should just be a customer support portal for the purpose of trust building, both with the customer and Google.
I like that. So, all right, great, Kurt. So we've checked this box off the list. I like that. I want to spend some time on the juicier details, which I think you have a lot of experience with, at least with the number of brands that you've worked with. I would imagine that among all the Shopify stores, they all have very different ways that they are filling their top of funnel traffic to their storefront. And so that is, I think, where the missing piece is for a lot of these Amazon first brands. They don't have to worry about traffic. They're marketers, but they're not marketers in the sense of I'm going after cold traffic and having to stop the scroll on Facebook or whatever it is that somebody else is doing to push them over somewhere else. So with that being said, Kurt, let's dive in. What do you see amongst all of the brands as some of the most successful ways that people are building their top of funnel traffic to their Shopify stores?
Well, so it's still Meta. Zuckerberg still owns this, right? For most stores, it's going to be Facebook and Instagram ads. And then, number one, just I don't have to know anything about the store to know that's what it probably is, especially if it's apparel, fashion and apparel. Oh my gosh, live and die by it. And so, that becomes a new thing that you have to understand and master. But then additionally, all right, so that number one, it's always Meta. Number two, I'm like right now, I'm just thinking of an 8-figure store that we work with that as a wild experiment, cut their ad spend on Meta in half and then cut it in half again and then dropped it to 0 for 30 days. And they're like, let's just see what happens. Like, you guys are maniacs. Please don't do this. They did it anyway. And the world did not end because they had turns out, a fabulous SEO footprint. So there was a lot of just people searching for the brand name or product and then landing on the site. But that's not a thing you could do overnight, right? Like, SEO is planting a garden. Minimum, it's like 6 months before that takes effect. And in this case, that site's been around a decade. And then email, it's like they have the list. And so I don't necessarily need traffic to fill my top of funnel, like at least not from the web. I could email people, and those are much more qualified, interested parties because they at some point raised their hand and said, yeah, I want to hear from you. And they have to like take action in theory on the email in their inbox, open it, ignore it, click it, delete it. But they still had to have at least thought about it. And I think it's easy to talk yourself out of doing email as a channel this way, when the reality is like the content of the email often doesn't really matter. It's just like, you just want to be top of mind, on the off chance that the person was like, oh yeah, I was going to check that store out. Oh yeah, I did need to reorder that thing. I need more coffee, tea, whatever. And so I think like those, for sure, a great email program, but that assumes that you have the emails. That's why I like that warranty, that registration idea, to try and build that email list early. You're never going to regret building an email list. The meta ads, but like, man, it's tough because you're going to just accept that you're going to burn money trying to figure it out initially. And that's frustrating, and I get it. And then Google Shopping. Google Shopping can be like, it's so straightforward. It takes the creativity out of it. It's just like, here, what's your catalog? And mostly it's you fighting with Google's arcane error messages to figure out what's missing from your catalog, like age, condition, whatever. And then, once you finally get through that, then Google Shopping, somebody's going to want to strangle me for this. It just kind of works, right? It doesn't have the same creative subjectivity that interruption style ads work. And the assumption is similar to Amazon. If they're seeing that shopping ad, it's because they searched like a high intent keyword phrase that matches. Like men's 10.5 Red Wing boots, and you happen to sell those. Okay, clearly that's what I was looking for. You weren't I wasn't scrolling through my ex's Instagram and then I get interrupted by a cool video of boots. And I'm like, oh, shop now, right? As I'm on the couch. That's the difference. So yeah, email, Meta, Google Shopping. I think it's those. And then for some brands, I have seen success with podcast advertising, where they'll have a conversion pixel, like iHeartMedia will do this, or iHeartRadio, I think is the podcaster that'll do it, the podcast network. And they'll then you have like your conversion pixel, and so you can actually track the success of it. And assuming you get like, again, right ad, right show, but those could be surprisingly successful as well. We've seen a lot of that higher end podcast advertising the last 18 months.
Fascinating. I love that. All right, Kurt. So I've got Facebook and Instagram ads. Would you even throw in TikTok ads in there?
For sure. There's TikTok ads, there's a TikTok shop. That one, just TikTok is so your content has to look native, right? Like you need something that works. And if you just start advertising on TikTok with no experience with short form video, I think you're going to have a bad time. Even if you don't have that experience, if you can acknowledge it and then just go and like start researching by going through hashtags, trying to find similar stuff, and then go, all right, like what are these successful videos like, that relate to me, and what can I learn from that? And then try and do that yourself. But all right, now you're learning to edit video, which I think at this point, probably an indispensable skill is to be able to edit video. At least everybody's got a smartphone in their pocket, and it probably has extraordinary quality. Like there's really not a lot of excuses anymore to not shooting video.
Yeah.
But yeah, it works.
They are
tough.
different though. I think to your point though, I think there are some times where an ad does well, maybe on Facebook and Instagram, that's not like a short form type of video. So you can't just like copy and paste your Facebook, Instagram ad over to TikTok. Now, maybe if they're both short form videos, maybe they might work. But yeah, you're right. I think like
it's
for
worth
each
trying.
platform, yeah, you got to test, right?
And so, no, all right. Well, I got nothing.
So that's number one. Okay. Number two, you also talked about SEO. So, but from your perspective, you're saying, look, this is going to take you at least 6 months for the brand that did well, turning off Facebook meta ads. You said they've been around for 10 years. What type of SEO are you referring to? Like, if I'm a Shopify store owner, I need to have a bunch of blog articles written on my site, or where is this SEO coming from? And how do you help?
It's text content, right? When we say SEO, it's got to be text content. And ideally, it's got to be educational or like very clear instructional, how to, here's a primer. It's someone has a question, you're trying to answer it. That's like where the ideal SEO works. I think where people get tripped up in any kind of organic content, especially educational, is they go like pure salesy. Don't be Billy Mays, right? You can link to your stuff. You can retarget people through Facebook, through Meta. You can have people sign up for the newsletter to get more info. You can even have like a content upgrade. Hey, get our PDF guide, right? With even more info. And then, you have captured that customer potentially, or that prospective customer. The long form educational content works well, especially if it's like a more expensive purchase. I knew a guy who was really successful with e-bikes during the pandemic, but who wasn't? But like this guy was top of all these search results. And it's because he had a 2,000 word primer that was like, here's everything you need to know about buying an e-bike. And it was like he had become an expert on it. He sold the things. He'd never ridden one. It was like years before he ever rode an e-bike. It's funny, but he knew everything. And so he wrote, 2,000 word article about it. And then you start chopping that up and you start doing variations on that and making it more specific so that it pops up and answers people's question. And when you're leading with like, hey, education, you're automatically more trustworthy than the person who's leading with trying to sell you something. Because, one's your buddy who helped you out, and the other one is like, some dude yelling at you at a street corner, like, buy my t-shirt. I got a whole trunk full of them. Give me your credit card. I'm good. Thank you. And so creating that content. But the problem is when you make the content initially, you really don't know what's going to be successful and what isn't. My wife is a Disney World blogger, and the stuff that's been successful and the stuff that's like been cited by newspapers, stunning. Never what we would have guessed. Like one is just like, hey, where are the princess meats? Is it not, where do you meet them? Not like, where do you find their deli meats? Like where the princess meats. And that was like in like USA Today, or somebody quoted it. And that was like a #1 page. Or there was one that was like the Disney 4 Parks Challenge, where you try to hit all 4 parks in a day. That's #1 last month. Okay. It's never the stuff we think. And that's the problem with it, is like you got to publish so much to figure out what works. There's a shotgun approach here. And that's kind of the theme here, is experiment until you push the right button, whether that's meta ads, subject lines, short form videos, blogging. And then no matter what, it's either a lot of time or a lot of money, either way. And so where do you prioritize? I think you just pick the format, the medium, the thing you're most comfortable with at first.
I like that. That's good recommendation. And I like that we're diving into these rabbit holes just to uncover like how much work actually happens in these areas. And that's what I want to help, the listeners understand, right? If you're like, this SEO thing, I'm just going to take my Amazon listing and just plug it into my description. Surely those keywords are going to populate, and that's SEO, right? And the way
it's a good start. I do tell people like, hey, with Amazon sellers have phenomenal product descriptions. So I usually start with like, all right, let's just take all of that and we're putting this in a Shopify theme, right? Like you already did the work. Let's get it all in there, and then maybe work a better layout out of it, or like tweak it a little bit so it doesn't feel quite so Amazon-y. Like there's definitely a look to the Amazon listings. But I think that's a good start. But then like outside of the product page, the Amazon brands, I always say the content is thin. It feels thin. Like I want it about people want to know who they're buying from, especially when they're buying direct. And potentially like that's why people Google the Amazon seller before they make a purchase. It's like, who is this? Who am I buying from? People buy from people, not brands. I think that's why celebrity spokespeople exist. Target's just a circle and a noun, meaningless. But you attach a celebrity to it, somebody funny, a brand name, someone you can relate to. It makes it easier to make a purchase. Small businesses have a huge advantage here where they try to hide themselves because they think that's what'll make them look bigger. I'm like, no, present yourself as this small business, as who you are. That, I think, makes you trustworthy. I like those founder-led brands. And so like, all right, that about us, your recommendations, that starts to give you a story. And I bet there's a lot of info in your head and you get a lot of common questions. Okay, that's where you start for your blog articles, your primer, like whatever that is. And you don't have to be great at writing. Like you could just transcribe it and then have ChatGPT copy edit for you. But God help me, do not have ChatGPT write the initial draft. It's not creative. It isn't. And it makes stuff up. But it's phenomenal copy editing. I mean, it's really good at it. Like that's its skill, is just arranging words. And so I like that approach. Like you may hate writing, it may feel like schoolwork, but you're an expert at something. Dictate that and then have, ChatGPT rewrite that for you.
I love that. And to that point, I think the challenge that Amazon brand owners would have is that, look, success on Amazon, you're getting instant feedback constantly, right? I launch a product, I'm running ads, and I can know within 24 hours how well my ads are performing. I know in general the first 7 days or 30 days after I launch a product whether that's going to be a winner or a loser, right? Like I can know very quickly, all right, I've got $1 million product on my hand, or yeah, this one's not going to be very good. Let's move on to the next one, right? I think the challenge here with especially the blog articles is like you're playing this infinite long game and you're not going to know what will get picked up because it may take literally years. And the one blog article that you wrote 5 years ago about where the Disney princesses meet or something like that is going to get picked up by a bigger publication, or Google indexes it, loves it, whatever it is, or maybe AI indexes it and picks it up in Perplexity, blah, 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 right?
I love Perplexity. That's like replace Google for me. Yeah, there was a time that Disney World blog site where if you Googled Disney World COVID restrictions, she had done a better job of Disney at explaining it. And so Google she was like not only number one, it had like the snippet, where like the content snippet, before they did the AI overviews. And that we didn't expect that at all, but you make the content and you kind of set a calendar of like, all right, once you figure out the thing you're good at, the thing that's least painful for you to do or is like most accessible to you, then you got to start doing it consistently. And so for me, it was like, I have to publish a podcast weekly. And now I've been doing that for 10 years. Well, when you go, hey, I got 2 million downloads, that sounds really cool. Divide it by 10 years of podcast episodes. And you see, it was like, oh, like this guy's he's got a bucket and a dropper, an eyedropper and a 5-gallon bucket. You do it after 10 years, you have a full bucket. You have to treat content the same way. And like, not everyone's going to be a winner, but the problem is you don't know which ones are going to be winners. Even with the podcast to this day, I am terrible at predicting the episodes that will resonate, that will be very successful, because the stuff I like is not necessarily what the audience likes. And you figure it out over time. But if you're just talking yourself out of creating the content and doing the work, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. This is great. I love this. But ultimately, I think the story is you're going to have to dive in and do the work, right? So we've talked about the top two. So Facebook, Meta ads, TikTok ads. We talked about SEO. And now let's talk about email list. So
okay,
an email list, I loved your idea of, look, I don't even care what product you sell. I highly recommend that you put on a registration, like QR code, right? Or a product warranty. Even if, you sell something as simple as, paper cups, right? Does that need a warranty? Arguably no. But if you have it on there, right? Now the conversions on this are extremely small. I realize that. But if you're doing, let's say you're doing 100,000 units of sales every month, right? Like that can add up, especially if you're just doing high volume products, paper cups, you're still going to get some conversions. And I like the analogy of like, even right now, if it's just a drop in the bucket, right? Like pick up the 10 people that are going to subscribe per month, or the 100 or the 1,000. because that will build up over time. What do you see working best in terms of email? Do you see much in terms of the clients that are doing really well with email versus not?
It's funny. Email is ubiquitous. It's part of the web. It's as natural to the internet as HTML links. And it's been around forever. And because of that, I think we take it for granted. And it's also like, it's not trendy, it's not sexy. Like TikTok Shop is the hot topic right now. So that's what you hear about, and and people chase trends. But the reality is, all of these successful brands are spending huge sums of money to maintain these huge email lists with very fancy, sophisticated CRM programs. Like Klaviyo is going to be the number one on Shopify. For starting out, you don't have to jump straight to that. You can do Shopify email is a quite affordable, useful, accessible solution, and then that way everything lives in Shopify. But no, without a doubt, every 7-8 figure brand we work with has email automations in place, has email welcome flows in place, has email pop-ups, and then is also sending campaign emails, whether those are announcements and sales, or ideally they're mixed in with product. Now, the counterintuitive thing that I wish more people would do: send plain text emails. They're so easy, they're so simple, and they're way more effective. When I see the really glossy one that you had your designer spend a ton of time on, that's like all JPEGs, I don't even hit display images on it, right? I never even saw the damn thing. I just archive it and move on with my life. Versus the plain text email, it just appears. It looks like an email from a friend. Ideally, you wrote it that way. You wrote it in the first person as you, the owner. Now you're building a connection with someone, right? And you're building trust. And ideally, you're getting feedback, because that's the kind of email people might reply to. If they reply to it, oh, your inbox rate just went way up. So I think it's easy, similar to the other content, it's easy to go like, to overcomplicate it and then talk yourself out of it. And, my idea is like, start simple, build the email automations, like cart abandonment. I want cart abandonment. I want a win back campaign, and I want a welcome flow, whether that's 1 email, 3 or 10, do what you can to support. And it doesn't have to be fancy design. It could be plain text that may even perform better. Has been my experience. And so I think it's table stakes. Like, I think email is 100% a requirement. If where it's like, number 1, register our domain name, 2, spin up a website so we can, with some customer support stuff, so we could start building that portal. Then number 3, I think is build, is start capturing emails and build some email flows.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that the other thing that you can do through email is actually drive home your brand story, right?
Exactly.
Because
that's the welcome flow.
Yep, you can tell people who you are. And one of my favorite things, especially if you're a founder-led, brand owner, right? Tell the story. And I love, one of the things that we've done is like, my wife will record just like, hey, this is what's going on in our personal life, right? And record it, post it on as like a YouTube short or whatever. And then one of the email channels we've been using as of late is just Beehive, plain text emails. And it allows us to like embed a link to YouTube so that it would automatically play if people click on it, right? And people just love the updates. And now, is it game changing?
You're real people. You're not being a brand, and it's plain text. Like, wow, that makes life a lot easier to create that content, doesn't it? It also makes it easier to consume.
10 times. And I feel like that connection to the brand is there. Now, is this providing game-changing amounts of money to our business? No, not right now. But is it building our brand story as we try to transition our brand that has primarily been Amazon first for the past 8 years to something that is going to be, ideally, I would love Amazon to only be 30 to 50% of my sales, because we've got wholesale and we've got Shopify and we've got TikTok Shop and we've got all these other sales platforms and channels that we're on. But that only happens if I have a customer base that loves my brand. And then I can just tell them like, buy from us wherever you would like. Could be Shopify, could be Amazon, could be TikTok Shop, could be a retail partner, right? And I feel like that's kind of the direction we're going. And so we're trying to play that long game. And guess what? Creating a text-based email like you talked about there, Kurt, it is simple, and it's something that you could do just every morning. Like send out an email, let people know what you're doing, what products you've got going on, send out some surveys, like just simple stuff. People love to be engaged. So anything else to add to that, Kurt?
No, I agree with all of that. I like the assessment.
Okay. All right. You talked about Google Shopping, and you said just get your products up there and deal with the weird nuances of Google being like, where's the age information and stuff like that. How complicated or easy is it to replicate basically your Shopify listings to Google Shopping?
Oh, so I mean, largely, like if you have filled out all the extra fields, it just works. But it's similar to fighting with an Amazon listing. There are requirements. It's like, this is what they need to know, and it has to be in this format and look this way. And so with Google Shopping, you got to create a Google Merchant Center account, just free. And then in Shopify, there's an official sales channel that you can add from Google, or there's, I think that's a good one to start with. And then if you need more customization, being able to mess with it, there are third-party ones like Data Feed Watch, and others. But within it, really, it's like you're going to submit it, and then it's going to tell you these are the products that are approved, these are the ones that are disapproved, and it'll tell you why. And then once you know why, then you got to go figure it out. The problem is, it's like I find it's descriptions of what the problem is. Sometimes it's clear, other times it's pretty obtuse, and like you could tear your hair out trying to figure it out, because you're just like, well, I'm just going to start changing stuff and then submit it and see if the error changes. And then what's interesting about it, they'll check. They have like a bot that'll add the products to cart and then go to checkout to make sure the shipping and tax info matches what you put in the feed. They'll verify it. And so you can't just be like, well, it's close enough. Like it actually has to be correct, as it should be. But these things are complicated. And by like the 5th time you've submitted it, I can see where people get frustrated. They're like, yeah, it's close enough.
Fascinating.
But yeah, Google Shopping, that one, I like it because it's technical. There's no, you either set it up right and your listings are approved, or you didn't. And then you pick a budget for how much it's going to spend. It's nowhere near as fiddly as all the controls in Facebook ads. And there's the creative on it is really like, okay, what's the title of the product and what's the photo? And it's just going to be what's from the listing. And then within that, like there's extensions you can add to it, and like you can have it show sales. And so you want to research those. But initially, you just got to get the darn thing in Google Shopping to try and get that high intent customers through. Now, what your budget should be, that I don't know. It depends. What's total advertising? How do we want to set it up? What kind of risk are we looking at? But whatever your total ad spend is, it's a tough one, because it's like, if this Shopify store isn't necessarily making money yet, is our budget, and let's say our marketing budget should be like 15% of revenue, gross revenue, 10 to 15%. Do we do that off what the store is making, but it's not making any money yet? Or do we do it like off of what Amazon is making, but we're potentially cannibalizing those sales? I'm not sure what the right answer is.
Yeah. And the idea that comes to me here is Amazon. So you as an Amazon seller cannot create Google Shopping listings unless you own the domain where that product is being sold. So the advantage is if Amazon is not putting your products into Google Shopping, which they're the only ones that can, okay, if you're trying to drive traffic to Amazon, then the advantage, and maybe the first step I would take as a Shopify store owner is, set up my products on Shopify. Before I do meta ads, before I do blogging, I'm just going to get my products listed on Google just as though it's another marketplace, because it is. And I can copy and paste my same Amazon information, because those same search terms are probably doing at least decently well on Google as they would be on Amazon. So then you've got a channel, at least that, Google can at least send some traffic to you that way. And you can play with the same type of the way when you do your Amazon PPC budgets. You're looking at the tacos metric, right? My total advertising cost of sale. It's 10 to 15% of your total revenue, right? And so go in there with that mindset and be like, I've got to prove out this Google shopping experience, just like I prove out, does this work on Amazon? So maybe that would be an easier way for Shopify or Amazon brands transitioning to Shopify is just to maybe have that top of funnel start at Google, and then people would maybe more natively start searching for your brand. Do you like that strategy, Kurt? What do you think?
I like it. This is the first time I'm hearing tacos. I was familiar with MERS, media efficiency ratio.
Welcome to the world of Amazon. Tacos is the word.
Tacos acronym. No, I think that when you don't know what you don't know, frameworks are really helpful to like just make an initial decision to get you unstuck. And then as you gain the experience and get comfortable, then you can adjust. But I think initially that frameworks exist to give us permission and get us unstuck. And so if you have presented us with a framework to answer this question, I was unsure of how to approach, by all means.
Yeah, I like that. All right. So Kurt, another question before we get into the last one, which is podcast advertising. Do you see brands doing well, or do you have any experience with like the Shopify Collective, which is where like other brands can basically sell your products on their website?
I think it's so cool.
Tell me about it.
All right. I was lucky enough that the team that built Shopify Collective, while it was at beta, were like, hey, could we show it to you? And so like we were talking about it with them, and I said, the thing I love about this, and really any Shopify feature that could do this, is Shopify has so many merchants and so many stores and so many products. Can you leverage network effects out of that? And like their Shop Pay, where if I've made a purchase on a different Shopify store and then I go to your store, it could just auto complete my payment address. That's huge. That's leveraging those network effects. Shopify Collective, same thing. Any two stores can install Shopify Collective, and then essentially they could drop ship for each other, right? Like we have a client, Abstract Ocean, they sell Tesla accessories. And certainly they're not the only Tesla accessory maker, and like different ones specialize in different things. And so there's another one called Test Bros that they have overlap in their catalog, but sell different things. And rather than try and make competing products, they just use Shopify Collective, and they fill in each other's catalog that way. And it's like, all right, we'll sell these items that we don't make on our site from you, and vice versa. And it works phenomenally well. It's like fairly plug and play, but you say these are the products that are eligible. The other person that it pulls it into their store, like the whole listing makes it so easy. And then once they sell it, when they go to fulfill it, it sends the fulfillment request back to the other Shopify store. And I love when I see merchants collaborate with each other, and Shopify Collective, like that's very much the spirit of it.
That's fantastic. And so with Shopify Collective, basically you're getting an affiliate commission, so to speak, when you sell that product. And if I feature someone else's brand product on my storefront, I'm going to earn a commission, but they handle the fulfillment of that product, right?
Yes.
So what is the average commission? Do you know?
Well, you set it up however you want, what you're comfortable with. And so in wholesale, it's typically they're going to be paying, like cost of goods is going to be 50% of MSRP. But it depends on category. But again, it's left up to the merchant to make that decision.
And so is Shopify Collective like, what does it look like? Is it a place where you just go and say like, hey, my products are available, I'm interested in partnering? Or like, is there a list of brands that you could potentially partner with, and you're like reaching out, cold emails, DMing these people, be like, hey, can we collaborate?
We've seen it. The way we've seen it done is, hey, they have the relationship, but it just, you go and you're like, well, we want to sell this, or would you consider selling this thing? Or like, hey, let's sell each other's goods. But you make that process so easy to say yes to by going, we're both on Shopify. Did you know we can use Shopify Collective to make this happen easily? And like once that friction is gone, suddenly it gets much easier. Now, is there like a way to search for people? Like, does it make it public? I'm looking at the Shopify Collective app installed in a store, and there's it's called, this one says Collective Retailer, so there's two versions of it. And in Collective Retailer, like as soon as you log into it, it says, hey, you could discover new products to sell and you could search. And so you can opt to list as a supplier, you can opt to list your goods in this big collective marketplace that people could search in, which I think that's the coolest thing ever. So you could find goods that way. If you want to find them outside of this, I've searched outside of the app, just in Google, the trick is to just add like in footer powered by Shopify. And often Shopify sites have powered by Shopify in the footer. So you could get it that way. But all right, in this app, you could search you could search for products that other people are offering, and then even make suggestions like pick for you, increase AOV by adding and this is for a site that sells Tesla accessories. Increase AOV by adding car emergency kit to pair with your best sellers. And they have from 2 different sellers, they have these like roadside preparedness kits, which, all right, that would work. They're not wrong.
That's cool. All right. So it basically almost is like a marketplace where you can raise your hand, say, hey, you can have my products. And then I could also go search for anything that I want to complement my own store. So,
and you can even you can automate it too, where they'll give you a sign up link that pre-approves suppliers to connect and share products with you. So if you're like, hey, I see you're on Shopify and I want to sell your stuff. Here's the link. And it'll just like ask them, oh, did you want to make these available to them?
All right. I see a lot of potential with Shopify Collective. So I like that option. All right. Last but not least, Kurt, you talked about Shopify, podcast advertising to drive traffic to Shopify. What have you seen working there?
Okay. So there are networks of publishers out there. Many people, there's solo podcasters like ourselves, but lots of folks who publish as part of a larger network. And then within that network has to make money, and they do it by selling ads. And they'll also have systems set up in place where they could do dynamic insertion of your ads into different programs. And so, again, it's the same gamble as the other creatives, like TikTok ads or Facebook ads, whatever. But if you can get the right ad, if you get the right magic words in your ad, and then run these in podcast advertising, the recall is extraordinary. I think I have the tip, or I have this written here. Oh yeah, it was Nielsen. Nielsen found that top of mind brand awareness for popular brands was 70% among podcast listeners, and podcast audiences are the most engaged there are, and a lot of that's because of the host, right? And if you could get a host-read ad, that's going to be more expensive than the dynamic insertion, but a host-read ad drives the most brand recall. So it's like think about the context there. If I'm on Instagram, I'm just scrolling endlessly, and hopefully the person stops scrolling for a second and a half, goes to my website, then bounces. That's going to be the majority of the experiences. Versus a podcast. You're at the gym, you're mowing your lawn, walking your dog, doing the dishes, driving your car, and listening to something you enjoy, right? Your mind you're going to be actively listening to it. And so it's just a different medium and format. But the downside to it, if I'm driving in my car listening to this thing, I can't go click. Like I can't just I could, but it's not a great idea. Go make a purchase.
Yeah. Yep. I love this, especially as a podcast host. So
as 2 podcast hosts, like, high five, we're the coolest.
I'm a big fan of podcasts, obviously. So this has been such an inspiring conversation, Kurt. I've absolutely loved this. We could record for probably another hour, but we've got to bring the show to a wrap here. So, Kurt, I love to leave the audience with 3 actionable takeaways from every episode. Here are my 3 actionable takeaways. You let me know if I'm missing something. If you're a successful Amazon brand owner, action item number 1, I would recommend at least getting your Shopify store up and running as soon as possible, even if it's with a basic template and basic images. You're not too worried about SEO, but acquire that domain and just start creating some history behind it, right? So that you have some credibility when people search for you on Amazon, but you also have credibility when people are just Googling that brand when they order it. Thus, you also had the idea of having that product warranty registration. So that's as simple as that first version of your Shopify site would be to just be it more support related, right? You're assisting anybody that might have had issues with their Amazon order. So that's action item number 1. Now, action item number 2, you want to start actually implementing or start generating some sales onto your Shopify store. Here would be my recommendations based off of what you discussed today, Kurt. The easiest, lowest hanging fruit I would recommend would be do the Google Shopping integration, okay? Because you've already got your product titles, descriptions, and all the stuff you need for Amazon. So replicate it there onto Google. That can generate you some sales. In addition, I love the low hanging fruit potentially of the Shopify Collective. Allow other people that maybe have dedicated email channels, they've got really good Facebook ads, they've got really good blog articles that are already driving traffic to their site, but they're willing to offer your product, even if it's at a 40% commission, you're going to pay them. It's the same as Amazon. They're bringing the traffic to you. Why not take that extra sale, right? So those would be my lowest hanging fruits to get started, because if you want to really ramp things up and I think scale on Shopify, you've got some big hurdles to overcome, which is the amount of work and time and energy that it's going to take, and the money investment, especially to create and refine yourself for Meta ads and TikTok ads. And for blogging, you're waiting a long period of time for those to pay off. Okay. So those would be my recommended actions there. My third and final recommendation is to play the long game here and understand that on Shopify, it is a different animal. You need to approach it with a very different mindset. And the most successful Shopify store owners that I know of, guess what? They have dedicated blog teams that create amazing blog articles, because they know that's where their traffic comes from. But they're pushing out tons, massive amounts of content. In addition, the people that are doing really well with Facebook and Meta ads, those guys are testing hundreds of pieces of different content every single week. So if you're thinking like you're going to figure it out by just like creating a few pieces of content per month and you're going to strike gold and you think you're going to take that brand to the moon, it's probably not going to happen. Like understanding the scale at what other successful people are doing helps provide that observation or what really takes to require in order to succeed there. So Kurt, anything else that you feel like I missed there?
I think you've just put together the SOP, the standard operating procedure for Amazon sellers. We're like, all right, now I got to start brand building direct to consumer via Shopify, my own channel. I think you just laid it all out.
All right. Well, Kurt's words, there's the SOP for you, getting on there. So that's what we're trying to execute right now. Kurt, my favorite time is to ask these 3 questions to every guest. So number 1, what's been the most influential book that you've read and why?
Yeah, an instructional how-to manual called How to Shoot Video That Doesn't Suck. I bought this several years ago. I just found it in Barnes & Noble. And it was the first time that I felt comfortable editing video. Like I had experience as a photographer. I loved the gear. But like the hard part is, how do you actually make something with all those toys? And we've all got the phones in our pockets now that are usually can be as good as a DSLR. But then, what do? How do you make video that doesn't suck? So it's a book, literally, How to Shoot Video That Doesn't Suck. Well, it gives you like a really easy to use step-by-step walkthrough and exercises on figuring it out. And now I'm very comfortable with editing video and shooting video and coming up with a concept. And I think, as of 2025, if you're selling online, I don't think you have a choice anymore.
Oh, 100% agree. Yeah, I think that skill is going to be a timeless skill. It's only going to be adopted more and more. So love that. All right, Kurt, question number 2. What's your favorite AI tool that you've been using and why?
All right, so it's ChatGPT, but the but is, I use ChatGPT all the time, fine. But you can get it to work inside Google Sheets. And there's some like Chrome extensions that'll do it that they're overpriced. I just with a little bit of app add-on code and the ChatGPT API, I've got this thing for pennies writing SEO titles, SEO meta descriptions for thousands of products in a Shopify catalog, right? That's often an overlooked thing. Pages, blog posts, products, collections can all have a unique meta description and title for Google to show. And it should probably have a call to action. And so I don't want to write that. I have ChatGPT do it, and it takes it like a few minutes on thousands of products. It costs me like a few dollars. And then I upload it back into Shopify. And now, in theory, when someone searches for a product that we rank for, they'll see this like succinct meta description that probably ends with like, click to learn more, right? And that makes a big difference in click-through rate to get people to the site. Once I figured that out earlier this year, I've been doing that all summer. And those sites are seeing SEO benefit from it.
That's brilliant. Love that. All right. That's a wicked smart hack there, Kurt. I love that. We could have a podcast just on that. All right. Last question. Who is somebody you admire or respect the most in the e-commerce space that other people should be following, and why?
Oh, all right. At the risk of being a kiss ass, I'm going to go with Shopify president Harley Finkelstein, because the man has demonstrated over and over his willingness to bend over backwards to help merchants and help Shopify partners in that ecosystem. Years ago, I would have been like, yeah, well, obviously, like he's got a dog in the fight here, and it's in his best interest. Like I would have taken it with a grain of salt, but I've talked to the man enough times. He's helped me enough times, and I've seen him help friends and merchants and other people enough times that I'm like, this guy, when he says that he's passionate about entrepreneurship, he's 100% genuine.
Love that. Great recommendation. All right, Kurt. If people want to learn more about you, they want to follow your story, your podcast, where can people find you at?
Well, of course, Google me. We'll test my SEO, Kurt Elster, kurtelster.com. You can grab my newsletter there. I've got links to everything else there. Or search the Unofficial Shopify podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Love that. Kurt, this has been an amazing conversation. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Visit ecombreakthrough.com for more information. If you've enjoyed today's episode, the best way you can show your appreciation is by clicking the subscribe button and quickly leaving a review. See you again next time.